welcome to our channel where we help your real estate investments work harder for you. I'm Samantha from Elevate Realty in Toronto. A lot of real estate investors would agree that freeholds are a much better choice compared to condos. But one thing that they're less sure about is how returns would differ in a house in Toronto versus a house in another market, and we get asked about Hamilton regularly. So in this video, I'll compare the key differences between these two markets and show you why, as real estate investors ourselves, as well as our clients, all choose Toronto over Hamilton. Before I move on, please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss other real estate investing videos like this one from our Elevate team. In my opinion, there's 5 differentiating factors that make Toronto and Hamilton different. There are 4 factors that Toronto wins hands down, but one where Hamilton is better at. So let's start with that one first. Number 1 is rent yields. When you look at your gross rent yields, Hamilton is a far better performer. Hamilton houses are 60% cheaper, but you're getting almost 80% of Toronto's gross rents. But here's the thing, gross rents are just part of the picture. Most real estate investors compare real estate based on cap rates, which is essentially the net rent yield after you deduct operating expenses like utilities and insurance. Now, when you look at cap rates, Hamilton and Toronto aren't as far off. This is because even though Hamilton is cheaper, operating expenses like utilities and insurance are more or less the same regardless of location. So your expense ratio in Hamilton is actually higher, and ultimately this eats into your cap rate. If you're wondering about numbers, hang on tight. I'll do a full financial comparison towards the end of the video so you'll get a better picture of this. Time is money, so the next thing to consider when investing in real estate is the cost of time, and I definitely recommend factoring in time. So if your property is in Toronto, it might take you 15 minutes each way to get to your property, so 30 minutes there and back. If your property is in Hamilton, it's 1 hour each way or 2 hours total, so a property in Hamilton takes you 1.5 hours more for each visit. This added cost will eat into your Hamilton cap rates even more. Toronto has a diverse population, so this means you're not reliant on a single tenant type. For example, right now during COVID, students have online classes. With Hamilton being a big university city, you lose a huge pool of potential tenants because of this, which increases vacancy rates in Hamilton. In Toronto, the truth is we are seeing the effects of COVID with increased turnover, but vacancies and freeholds haven't actually increased because there's such a diverse pool of tenants who still want to live in Toronto. Another thing to add to that tenant profile bit is the financial situation of tenants. There's better job opportunities in Toronto compared to Hamilton, so this further reduces leasing time that's required to find a great tenant to take care of your property. Just for your comparison, Toronto's normal vacancy rate is less than 1%, whereas Hamilton's vacancies are typically higher at 2.4%. Next, let's talk about long-term appreciation, which for both Toronto and Hamilton is the bulk of your returns. Toronto's growth is definitely higher than Hamilton. Toronto attracts more people through immigration, and we get more attention from public and private sector developments. As a result, if you look at the past 10 years, Toronto has seen better annual appreciation at an average of 8.3% per year compared to Hamilton, which was at 6.9%. Finally, remember price fluctuations add to your investment risk. Hamilton is a developing city with lower entry prices, so it actually attracts more speculative investors. In the past few years, prices were artificially inflated in Hamilton, with investors betting on higher growth from a proposed LRT system. But unfortunately, this got shot down at the end of last year with the Ontario government pulling out of the proposal. So things like this definitely add to a higher investment risk for Hamilton. I love numbers, so let's go over a financial comparison between a typical Hamilton freehold versus a typical Toronto freehold so you can see how returns actually compare. Based on what I just talked about, I'll factor in added travel time and higher vacancies in Hamilton with higher appreciation in Toronto. So here's a breakdown of the cumulative returns on investment over a 5-year investment period. I used a 20% down payment and no renovations, and just so we have a more objective comparison, let's use ROI percentages instead of absolute returns. So first up, we have cash flows. And Hamilton has, like I said, higher gross rents, but higher expenses. So the net returns from cash flows aren't as far off. We're looking at a cumulative 5-year ROI of 47% from cash flows in Hamilton and a lower 33% ROI from cash flows in Toronto. The next part of returns is from equity gained when you pay down your monthly mortgage. Now, this is more or less the same for both locations because it's simply a percentage based on your loan amount amount. So the cumulative ROI for both is around 45%. The last part of returns is from appreciation. I mentioned before Toronto has better appreciation compared to Hamilton, and this becomes a lot more significant after leverage. When I calculate it, I deduct closing costs and selling costs, assuming it's a 5-year investment, so we get a more accurate picture of actual gains. Based on this, we're looking at a cumulative appreciation ROI for Hamilton of 160% compared to 196% for Toronto. So when you add all this up, the total 5-year ROI for Hamilton is 252% versus 274% for Toronto. And this is why Toronto is a better real estate investment. What you should also take note of is that your budget might end up being the limiting factor. Because properties are cheaper in Hamilton, you need less than $120,000 to invest in Hamilton compared to at least $200,000 to invest in Toronto. As a trade-off, Hamilton will have lower total returns, is less convenient, plus it's higher risk from both the tenant side as well as from market price fluctuations. Our team focuses in helping investors buy properties in the Toronto core. So if you want to learn more about this, we're ready to help. You can contact us with a link that I'll put in the description below. And finally, if you find this video useful, please give us a thumbs up and help us out by sharing it on your social media and tag us at Elevate Realty CA. I wish you all the best in your real estate investing journey. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.